Well, cool. Yeah, I thought we could just start with a little grounding exercise.
Let's
Just
do
real
it.
brief. Just yeah, feel your butt on whatever you're sitting on. Feel gravity holding you to this earth. At the same time, feel the length of your spine. Feel the levity, like your head being drawn up to the sky by a string. And just take a few breaths in that fullness from your root to your crown, filling up that whole space. And if your eyes are closed, just feel out into the room that you're in, into the space that you're in, the quality of the air, the quality of the light. And just taking a quick scan of what's it like to be inside your body today, right now. How's your nervous system? How's your energy? We can open our eyes too and just connect across the screen. And I know where you're sitting. I can kind of feel into that space as well. And just kind of feeling that connection, like as if we're in the same room.
Yeah, thank you for that. I feel
Yeah.
like more and more this virtual way of connecting is just becoming normal for just about everybody. And the more that I do it, especially with people who I'm already connected with, the easier it feels to actually be connected, even though we're in separate locales. And I kind of like that because we're all connected anyway, all the time. Even if we're not talking to each other or actively communicating with one another, we're all always connected. And this is kind of a cool way to embody that connection in a real way, even if we're far apart.
Mm.
So I appreciate the meditation this morning too. I think I needed that to get started. I'm feeling a little low energy today. Um, got my pu'er tea, so that should help.
Nice.
Yeah, what's on your minds today, man?
What's on my mind? I'm feeling good this morning. I like went just kind of plummeted into a pit on Saturday. I just like didn't want to do anything, just felt I don't know. Yeah, just no motivation, just didn't want to do any of my practices, didn't want to like I just didn't want to do it.
Hmm.
And it took me, I mean, it pretty much took me all weekend. It was like it was better yesterday, but still kind of lingering. And so I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I want to go into all of that right now. Like, actually, I think that'd be a good topic for a coaching session with you,
Okay.
um, to explore like this pattern that shows up.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think today, just like even without great sleep last night, it feels like whatever that was is lifted. Like there's like this cloud on me, and I'm like, all right, like things aren't so serious and so hard. Like I'm alive, I got food, I can be silly, I can whatever, like there's a little more lightness today. So
Good. Glad to hear that. And I'm also curious, did anything catalyze that sort of downward turn?
not that I can really pinpoint. I think that's part of what makes it hard is that sometimes it's just like all of a sudden it just kind of hits me and I'm like, man, everything just feels so hard. Everything feels so like dark and hopeless or like I'm like am I ever gonna get to where I want to get to with business and finance and coaching and like all that kind of stuff. It just feels like
Hmm.
yeah, but it's not like one thing. It's just like I wake up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do anything.
Hmm. Hmm. You're in a kind of
So
a state of being
yeah.
that's perceived to be negative, it sounds like. And, we talk about this a lot just in the seasons of life. And knowing you, I can see that you're a pretty motivated, positive, outgoing, willing human being. And you're in that state most of the time when I see
Mm,
you. And
mm,
so it makes sense to me that following the natural flow of energy, at some point that's going to happen. And even if there's nothing to catalyze it, as uncomfortable as it may be when it's happening, sometimes I feel like those states of being are required for some reason, and you may never even know why they're required.
mm.
All you know is when you feel better, you feel better. And when you
Yeah,
feel shitty, you feel shitty. And it's
yeah.
like we always talk about peaks and valleys. Well, there's a level below the valley, and I call that the cavern.
Mm.
And sometimes you got to sit in the cavern for a while.
Yeah. It makes me think of oh, where did I hear this? I think it was I may be misplacing this, but I think it was a talk between East Forest and Ram Dass.
Mm,
They have like a recorded one of the last recordings of Ram Dass before he died, but East Forest like was just interviewing him and ended up making an album out of a lot of the sound bites from that. But anyways, they're talking about these peaks and valleys, and it's like they were framing it in the lens of like we forget and then we remember. We
mm.
forget that we're, you know, part of the whole and then we remember that we're like, oh, we're divine and we're like connected to everything and everything is love and everything's amazing. And then we forget and we're like, no, I'm separate, I'm alone, I'm gonna die, like everything sucks. And they were saying it's like, yeah, that's part of the engine. Think of like an engine with like pistons where it like compresses and then it expands and it compresses and expands. And it's like that remembering. And I know I feel this for me. It's like when I remember, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm like motivated to like, yep, let's go climb that mountain. We're on a journey. I'm a spiritual warrior. Like, I got it, and then I forget. And yeah, there's some desire in me to not dip so much or to like there's a desire for something to shift. There's some pattern that seems like it. I would like to figure it out. I would like to like shift something. I don't know. And maybe it's just like even my attitude during it or
Hmm.
I mean there's some part of me that just wishes I would never dip down there.
Of course.
you know. But I don't know. Yeah, it's something right now. It's something to work for me to work with and it does show up
Hmm.
periodically, regularly. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I would like to know, what did you do to move through that, or did you do anything to move through that?
Um, Well, what did I do? I mean, I eventually did my practices. Like, I didn't want to do qigong in the morning. I barely wanted to meditate. Um, I did meditate. That's like the one, like, if I'm gonna do anything, I'm gonna meditate. It's like I can at least just sit, you know. Um, but what did I do? I mean, I eventually I did touch on a bunch of different practices. So like later in the day, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do my qigong because I do. I've made a commitment to do it every day for 12 weeks. So I'm like, I don't want to just like let that go away. So I did a smaller session, and I did some like stretching meditation, just like took like 40 minutes to just like stretch and do like some really light yoga. I mean, I don't know, I don't really do yoga, but something like that. And then I meditated, and I think I did some other stuff too. I mean, I did some push-ups, I did some like try to get like in my body and move some energy, and I may have hit the punching bag too. I kind of did a lot. And I don't know, I still just like all day Saturday, like it didn't feel, oh, I did some breath work and was just like screaming, like did some
Hmm.
big like Wim Hof style, and then really was just like screaming and punching my bed. And um so all of that, I mean, like there was some desire that like I wanted to reach that spot of like treasure in the cavern of like, oh, I released it, and I actually felt that like whatever, maybe I needed to cry or grieve or something. Like I wanted to get to that level,
Hmm.
and I didn't. And it was just kind of like, all right, well, I screamed and I still kind of feel like shit.
Hmm.
Um, so all that is to say, like I did stuff. I was working with it, and I'm glad that I did. And then it was just kind of like a slow release. Like Sunday it was better. I just kind of felt tender, and then today I'm like, okay, I think it's fast for now.
Hmm.
So,
I find it so interesting that when we started talking about this, you were like, I didn't want to do anything. But then over the course of just a few minutes, you told me all these things that you did end up doing to try and make yourself feel better at the very least. Or I've heard you say in the past to be able to hold whatever this is within
mhm,
yourself. And it sounds like, sure, maybe it got your energy moving a little bit. Sure, maybe it shifted some things around and let out some emotion, but that sort of cloak of darkness was still there, was still hanging around.
mhm.
And I'm curious what you think about that. Just the fact that you mustered up the willpower to do the things that you know you like to do, the things that you know keep you centered, and then that cloak was still around afterwards.
Hmm. Well, what do I think of that? I mean, I am proud of myself for doing those things,
Mhm.
even though like I really didn't want to. Or I mean, obviously I wanted to because I did them, but like there was a part of me like I was just like begrudgingly doing it, or like, so I'm proud that I still did it, that I didn't just like I'm like, I got to do something to whatever, to move this energy or to give myself more capacity to hold this, like a you know so that feels good. um to see that like even when I'm feeling like that, it's like, okay, I did end up doing a lot of things that are useful, even if it didn't like click in that moment. Like maybe I just needed to metabolize it and that helped. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's some sense of like, I guess, pride. Like I'm proud of dealing with it like that. And there's another, I mean, what comes up is like the fact that it didn't release, or like it was like this cloud of darkness. Like as I'm chewing on it, it's Elise and I call this it's like a hologram, where it's like these are our patterns, right, that show up, and it's like any little piece of it like shows up kind of anywhere and everywhere, right? It's like the whole is contained in every part, and vice versa. And um it's something we learned from authentic relating, which is just a nice framing, I guess. um but there is like a hologram there for me, where it's like there's some it seems like there's some wounded inner child piece that's like doesn't believe that I can get what I need or what I want, and
Hmm.
um tied into money and financial security. And um yeah, there's something there. And there were a few times where like Elise would try to be like with me and asking me questions, like trying to help me uncover like what is that part that is hurting. And it didn't feel like I could really access it.
Mm.
It was just like, okay, I think I'm trying to go in, and I'm usually pretty good at like tracking and finding like, okay, yeah, that's what's coming up. And it was just kind of a blank.
Hmm.
So I don't know. There's a thought that, maybe getting some kind of support, going to finding a good therapist for even just a couple sessions, just like, can we like get in there and see if there's something there to be uncovered?
Hmm.
It's a thought I'm sitting with. So
Well, what I'm seeing in you is evolution. And
mm,
we've both experienced this shroud of darkness before and been on the opposing side of it as a friend and as support. And so when I look at our history and when we've approached this before and compare that to what you're talking about today that just happened this past weekend, I see an evolved Devon that is going through that. And
mm.
I'm sure it doesn't feel that way when you're going through it because when you're in darkness, all you see is darkness. And any attempt at trying to find something in the dark is futile. So, what I mean by seeing an evolved version of you is every time this happens, we try and find ways of managing our state of being. And you chose to manage your state of being in a specific way this time. Maybe it took you all weekend, but you still managed it in a way that you're proud of.
Mm,
And I think that's something to be celebrated because you're better than you've ever been
mm.
in this moment, in this day. And in the past, when you've handled that darkness, I bet you it wasn't in the way that you handled it this weekend.
Mm.
I'd love to share a little metaphor that came to me a few years ago with you that sort of helps put this into perspective.
Yeah.
And the way I see these things or any challenges that come up over and over again, any patterns that come up over and over again, is like if you imagine yourself and you're standing on a horizontal wheel, like perhaps the wheel of a bike. You're standing on top of it and it's circulating on a horizontal plane. And this is your life. You're going around in this circle. And when you make it to one point on the circle, there's an obstacle. Let's let that obstacle represent the pattern. And there are all these different ways to deal with the obstacle, right? You can avoid it altogether. You can go over it. You can try and smash it into the ground. You can do any number of things to try and overcome this obstacle, to shift your state of being from this undesirable state, right?
Mm.
And the way I see it is every time we come up against an obstacle, there's a lesson there for us, right? And so back to the wheel, you're going around the wheel, you come up against this obstacle and you jump over it or you sidestep it. And every time you jump over it or sidestep it, that wheel's going to come back around. You might not feel that state of being for a while because you're on the other side of the wheel, but eventually you're going to come right back around to that same
Mhm.
obstacle. So what do you do? What do you do with the obstacle?
Mm.
Well, I can't tell you the answer to that, but what I can tell you is that if you learn the lesson that's underneath the obstacle or that's inside the obstacle, then the obstacle becomes a set of stairs. You learn the
Mm.
lesson, then you climb the stairs up to another level. The wheel keeps turning. And maybe you come back around to that same obstacle again, and it's much smaller this time because you figured out part of the lesson, or
Mhm.
you figured out all of the lesson, then it's gone altogether. But you can rest assured there's going to be more obstacles on this wheel.
Mhm.
So every time that you come up against an obstacle or a pattern, you search for the message, you search for the teaching in that obstacle. And every time you integrate the lesson, you climb the steps. And the better you get at doing that, the more your life becomes an ascending spiral. You're less on this horizontal plane, confronting the same obstacles and patterns over and over again, and you're just ascending because you've become a master at learning how to decipher the message underneath whatever this undesirable thing is that's happening to you.
Mm.
And that metaphor sort of came to me spontaneously when I was dealing with a similar feeling, similar shroud of darkness. And the image just came to me clear as day that what I want to do is I want to keep climbing stairs. And I've made that commitment. And actually, since I've made that commitment, my obstacles have become harder
Mm.
because
Mhm.
it's as if the universe knows that I'm committed to being the best version of myself. And me being the trickster, the sly man that I am, my higher self is the ultimate sly man. And so it knows, oh, you want to learn some shit. Okay, well, I'm gonna make it extra challenging for you because I know you can handle it.
Mhm.
And I keep handling it, and I'm sure
Mm.
there will be a point where we're on this conversation and roles are reversed and I'm in another shroud of darkness. And who knows how I'm going to handle it. I'd like to think that I handle it in a way that impacts me to learn the lesson inside of it. But that's just how I view it now. And I wonder if that metaphor resonates with you at all.
It does, yeah. I've heard you share it, and I've heard it. Someone else has painted like a very similar picture of like that spiral, right? And it's like it's helpful. It's really helpful. Because even, it's like the way I'm hearing that, anytime I'm here's this obstacle, it's like I may not figure it out in this pass if there is something to figure out at all, but it's like even just by it's like, okay, am I gonna choose to like collapse here, or am I gonna choose to just try to step up and find a way to climb up? And so it's like, okay, yeah, I wasn't happy on Saturday, but at least I was like, well, I'm gonna go that way instead of collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And so great. So at least I know that at least something that I learned was how to climb up a little bit more, right? It's like practice stepping up instead of distracting away or subverting it or whatever. And so I mean, there's something too in that I love is like the zooming out. That when I'm in that place, it's like, fuck, why is this here again? Like I thought that I have beatenness, or like there's some desire to like not be here again.
Mm-hmm.
um but it's like, well, no, of course it's going to come back again. And even when I feel like, oh no, I've conquered it, it's going to come back again just to make sure. Like it's going to just keep coming back. And maybe it's like it was a big obstacle, then like you add a layer. I'm like thinking like adding a layer of soil or something, and it's smaller and then it's smaller, but like maybe there's still a little mound there, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And if I get caught up on like, what, this mound is here again, it's like, it's just a mound, like it used to be a fucking cliff.
Mm-hmm.
um so there, I mean, yeah, there's a lot packed into that metaphor that I love, that helps. And there's some, maybe it's a self-critic, or there's some desire to like, I would love to be able to like, okay, if I wake up and I'm in this state, it's like I would love to be able to find the place in me that's like, okay, this is here. Right. This is what I'm here for. I'm like, I'm learning. And so how do I engage with this? And like there's a what's the it's the part of me that like is centered and like can make choice and just like, all right, this is how I want to handle this. It's like I want to be able to access that quicker, because then, if it's like, if I can access that, then I'm like, yeah, okay, this thing is here and I'm just gonna deal with it the best I can, and it's all part of it. But it's like that part of me is so far away, right? It's like, no, qigong, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do anything. It's like, all right, I'll do the qigong even though I'm not happy about it. And like I get so like whiny inside, and like, and that's all part of the dance too. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, of course it's easy when I have this part online that I'm like, yeah, okay, it's just a challenge. I'm here for challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's easy.
Yes.
There's some, I'll just finish it up with like, well, what is it? It's there's some part of me that believes that this is possible. It's like I just want things to not be hard. I want to be so like master of myself that like these things aren't hard anymore, and that's not real. It's
Mm-hmm.
like hard is always going to come, and hard always feels hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's always going to feel that way, and it's just like, how do I navigate the hard even when it feels hard?
Mm-hmm.
And you just do it. You just do the best you can. I think it's like, all right, great, you didn't feel excited about doing those things and it felt hard to do those things, and you still did it.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple things that come to mind as you're talking about that.
Mm,
One is that in that really dark, low place, at least for myself, that's when the worst parts of myself come to surface. Like you mentioned, I get really whiny internally, and I'm like, oh man, I'm the biggest baby when that's happening to me. Like I feel like such a little girl. Like it's like everything is hard for me right now and nobody else. And therefore, I don't feel like I want to be as nice as I usually am, or like I don't feel like I have the patience to deal with whatever anybody else is dealing with because I feel poor me, you know?
mhm,
So
mhm.
that's one part of it. And as we've been talking about that, oh, it's really hard to maintain that conscious center when you're in that because everything feels so shitty. But it's actually if you can muster up even just a little bit of consciousness, a little bit of awareness, it's actually a really beautiful opportunity to see those parts of yourself, to see those low parts of yourself. And if we can find a way to observe them lovingly, and I almost want to say not indulge in them because that's ultimately from the outside is what it feels like is happening. I've in some way, shape, or form decided that I'm going to indulge in those lower parts of myself and be a whiner and be
Mm-hmm.
grumpy and be
Mm-hmm.
unpleasant. That's a choice. But it's actually those parts are just what are most present because most of the time I'm living in from my higher self and that feels good. And it's like maybe the lower self just wants some screen time, you know? Maybe it wants to take the stage for a little bit because it doesn't
Mm.
get that opportunity very often anymore. And so that's one thought. Um, and the other thought is if I if I didn't do the things that I know help me stay centered when I'm feeling good, if I didn't do those things, how much darker would it get? You
Mm.
know, like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned all these things that you begrudgingly did. I'm guessing that it moved the needle even 1 degree towards the positive because you made that choice to climb the ladder instead of going down. If you didn't do those, would it stay the same or would it just continue to go down?
Mm.
You know, like there was some action there. You made the choice, okay, I've got to do something. I don't know if it's going to make me feel better or not. I really don't want to fucking do it, but I'm going to do it. And I
Mm-hmm.
did it. Did that move your needle at all?
It certainly did a little bit. Yeah. And I think, I mean, in that is like there's a even deeper practice of like non-attachment, right? It's like I think I don't know where it's I think Gandhi said something like this of like being not attached to the outcome. It's like you do things because you think they'll work. It's not like, oh, I'm just not attached, so I don't really care what I do or what happens. It's like, no, you care. I care deeply. Like I want to be more centered. I want to be more loving. But you still like when you take the action, it's and this is from the Bhagavad Gita too. It's like it's like how do you get out of the wheel of karma, right? It's like by doing things with no attachment to the outcome. You're still choosing the right action, but not attached to what happens after it because some of that is out of your control. So it's like,
Hmm.
I can feel the downward spiral is like, well, I don't want to do that. All right, fine, I'll do it. Oh, see, it didn't work anyways, right? Like, well, that was stupid, right? Well, fuck it, but and then it's just like, oh, like I'm not even like taking the nourishment of doing the thing. It's like, well, it didn't fucking work, so what's the point, right? But it's like, okay, and so there's a deeper practice of I'm going to do these things. I don't know if it's going to work, but this is the way I know how to work. Like this is the right action. This is the most centered action I can take, the most loving action I can take. And this thing is a mystery to me. I don't know what it is. If I knew what it is, then I probably wouldn't be in this place of like darkness. I'd be like, oh, there's that wound. Yeah, I need to deal with it in this way. It would be so clear, right?
Hmm.
But it's like working with the mystery. So it's like, all right, there's a mystery here. I know I have qigong as a practice. I'm going to do that, and then afterwards, it's like, okay, it's still here. Great. I love myself enough to do it. Like I'm trying to tend to this piece, and it's still here. Okay, something still hurts.
Hmm.
Now what do you need? All right, let's go. Just go for a walk. Whatever it is. But it's like, yeah, it makes me think of parenting, right? It's like, which maybe you can tell me if this is true or not, right? I'm not there yet, but it's like sometimes your kid is just inconsolable and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna love you and like I'm gonna offer you this thing. Great, that didn't work. What else?
Hmm.
Okay, then I'm gonna try this thing. And you just like keep trying to love this part that's like you're in a lot of pain and you don't have the language to explain what's happening.
Hmm.
Okay, what can I do? It's like all I can do is just try to show up and love you the best I can and not get frustrated when that thing didn't work. Right? Well, I just gave you a hug. We just cuddled for 20 minutes. You're still upset? Like, well, that's not going to do any good. Right?
Yeah, you said it. That's definitely one of the hardest parts about being a parent, and very much relates to what we're talking about because sometimes there's literally nothing you can do.
Mm,
You try all the things, you offer all the support, you offer all of the comforts or solutions to whatever is going on with the child. And sometimes they just got to go through it and you just got to be right there with them. And
mm.
that's definitely something that I'm still learning and working through because my tendency is to get frustrated because I like it quiet. And if it's not quiet after I've tried all the things, then I'm just like, well, great, but I at least tried all the things, because
Yeah.
I love her. And in the same way we can love our shadow, you know,
Hmm.
maybe there's no consoling the shadow when it's got its time on the stage. Maybe it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter what you do. Sure, you can move the needle a little bit, even a fraction of a degree. That's great. The intention's there. You're doing your best to try and console this part of yourself that is really just calling out for help and calling
Mm.
out for love. And after you've tried all the things, if you still feel like shit, well, I don't know. I guess it's time to just let it play out.
Yeah.
Take the pressure off and
Right.
and go cry and curl up in a ball and go be alone. Like for me, like the tendency is I want to go be alone, but what I really need is support from
Mm.
others and from myself. But other times I'm like, no, seriously, like just don't talk to me. Like I need to go be alone. I need to
Mm.
be quiet and dark and be in this self-loathing, this darkness. And that's the only way this is going to play out. It's probably best for everyone else if I just go be alone so I don't ruin your day too.
Yeah. 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 At some point, like surrender, right, is a grace. Is like there's like these levels of emotion, right? It's like oftentimes, especially for men, it's like anger is at the top, anger is here, and then like below anger is like there's some fear. Like anger comes to protect some fear, and like then it's like drops down into like some sadness, and then grief. And like to drop down is like there's a surrender that happens to get like through into grief, and through grief you just have to like it's like total like okay, I can't do anything, like it just take me. And I think usually there's some gem that's just like oh there's actually bliss on the other side of grief when you can just like fully relax, like release into it and just like get wrung out.
Mm,
And so yeah, I mean that's what comes up when you're talking about just like at some point, even when you try all the things, you're just like, okay, like can I just practice surrendering and just be like, all right, this is here.
mm.
I don't like it.
It's one of the hardest things to do.
It's
It
yeah.
really is because as people who help lift others up, we sort of unconsciously place this expectation on ourselves that we need to be great all the time. We need to be at the top of our game all the time, or most of the time. Like I know that's a tendency within myself. And even above that anger, I would say is paralysis. Like, I don't know if you've ever been so deep in the shadow that you're literally feel paralyzed. It feels like you can't do anything. It
Hmm.
feels like you won't do anything. And I think that's really what true depression is. is a state of chronic paralysis. And
Mm,
speaking from experience here, for many years, I would go through these cycles frequently of doing great, being motivated, and then I would just crash into this hardcore, paralyzing depression where I couldn't even get up off the couch, you
mm,
know? And so grateful I don't have to deal with that anymore, but I definitely sympathize anytime somebody is experiencing this because it is so freaking hard to get out of that, to get yourself up, especially if you're alone, if you don't have a family or a support system or a partner and you're just in that paralysis by yourself, man,
mm,
that's real darkness, you know? And so we've had a really wonderful discussion here about how we handle it. And this might be hard to answer, but we're pretty equipped with tools. What would you say to somebody who's in their shadow, experiencing this shroud of paralysis or depression or darkness, and they don't have any concrete way of getting through it? What
mm.
would you say to somebody to give them some encouragement or help them in any way?
Yeah, man. It's funny you asked that question too. Like when I was in that, like it does feel like this. It's a depression, and it's like a short bout for me, but that is the pattern where it's like, whoa, I can feel what it's like to like really be depressed. And some people live like that for long, long periods. And I'm like, man, it's hard. It's hard to muster up the the gumption, the willpower to like do the thing that you know is going to help
Hmm.
when you're in that state. Um, so that's one thought. Just even feeling like the despair of that. It's like, oh wow, it's heavy. That's hard to get out. And I think, yeah, if I was speaking to someone who like didn't have a lot of these practices or like just really didn't know what to do, I would like let's start small. Like what's one thing you can do, a small thing? Like can you go for a walk and even just be like, I know you feel like shit, but like can you just go for a walk? And if that's too much, can you just step outside and breathe some fresh air for 10 breaths for a minute, whatever, right?
Hmm.
Like starting to take these like it's like this small, what's the smallest little step that you can actually step up on that on that thing, on that spiral, as opposed to just maintaining or going down. It's like, and maybe, if I'm talking to someone too, it's like, well, can we make a list of let's list out 5 or 10 things you can do that when you're now that we're speaking where you're not in the dark hole by yourself. So it's good to like make a list right now when you have more of your faculties. What are some small loving things I can do? What would be the most loving thing I can do in that state?
Hmm.
Right? Okay, well for me I can go for a walk. I can get some fresh air. I can do some meditation. I can draw, like something that's just like relaxing, that's not like got to be productive, like so starting to get that list together, that like toolkit. That way when you're in that deep pit, you're like, okay, this sucks. I'm in that pit. Right, I made a toolkit. What's the one thing? Fuck, I don't want to do it, but okay, I'll do that one thing. I'll
Hmm.
go take a sip of fresh air and look at the sun, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's there's something to even just that little bit. It's like, okay, I'm shifting, the tiniest little gear is shifting inside me of like I'm taking positive action.
Hmm.
I'm doing one loving thing towards me,
Hmm.
you know. And then I think even like a bigger net too of like, who do you have that support? Who can you call? you know, when you're in it, when you're just coming out of it, like we can't do these things alone, you
Hmm.
know.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love your response. I think coming up with a sort of emergency list of
Mm,
things that really small things that might shift the needle just a tiny bit to help get you out of that state, or at least help you stop fixating on the state, because I think that's a tendency too when myself or when I've seen others get into this state. It's like you're so fixated on what's wrong. You're so fixated on how shitty you feel that that's all you can think about. Your mind sort of takes over and takes the wheel of wherever you're going or whatever you're doing, or even if you're, especially if you're just sitting there, it's just like you're just stuck in that feeling. So having a sort of list of small things that can help, I think, is a really beautiful sort of course of action to have on hand when that happens. And I would add to that, probably at the top of the list, who are who are three people that you can call? What are the top three people? Maybe it's your mom. Maybe it's your best friend from high school. Maybe it's your dog. You want to talk to your dog, or cry to your dog. Um, just having a list of those people handy and having that right next to your tool list could be helpful. And one other thing that I would like to add, because I heard you say this list is of things that I can do that are loving me, loving towards me. Well, a lot of people who are depressed, they don't love themselves and they haven't loved themselves for a long time, or maybe they've never loved themselves. And so you and I can come up with a list of things that we can do because we've been loving ourselves for years now. We've been practicing loving ourselves. I can definitely tell you there was a period of my time where I hated myself, like
mm,
with a passion. And so I was very self-destructive. And that's where a lot of that depression came from. But I do believe there is one thing that people can do if they can get themselves to do it that might shift the attention off of themselves and shift the attention more on loving somebody else or something else. And that's being of service either to the planet or to a fellow human being or an animal. Like one of the things that I would do when I was depressed, if I could get myself out the door, was go for a walk. And there's a school right by my house that I always walk around with my dog. And there's always trash out there, always. And I would just bring a little bag with me and I would just pick up every piece of trash that I saw. And that small thing, it's not going to solve the environmental issues that we're having, but I'm at least picking up the little space around the school in my
mm,
community. And even I can tell you it did not help my depression 100%, but for moments, it took my mind off of myself, took
mm,
my mind and put it in, okay, I'm doing this because I want this to be cleaner. I want this area to be cleaner. And I think that's a really good place for people to start, because when you're depressed, you also don't really, like, for myself, I find it hard to want to reach out to people. I find it hard to want to even interact with anybody, even the clerk at the grocery store. I'm just like, just don't talk to me. But
mm,
if you can do something that's serving nature or serving the animals, maybe get some bird seed and go sit at the park and
mm,
throw some bird seed out. You're feeding the birds. Or,
mhm,
like I said, pick up trash. Or, if you can really get yourself to do this, try and volunteer, even for an hour. If you know
mm,
somebody who needs help, or if you like a certain organization, try and get in contact with them when you're not feeling so crippled, so that when you are, you can do something to bring yourself outside of yourself.
mhm, mhm,
That's those three things combined, I think, would be a good course of action. And chances are, if your depression is really bad, maybe none of that's going to help, but at least you did something. At least you attempted, like we were talking about earlier. You made the choice, okay, I'm not gonna let this crush me anymore. I'm gonna at least
Mm,
try to do something.
yeah. I love that. I love that lens of how can I help something other than me. Um, yeah, it's so true. I mean, that could be like if I can get myself there, as soon as I need to show up for someone else, it's like, oh, I'm not even thinking about my problems. I'm not thinking, it's just like, yeah, how can I be of service over here? That's great. Because then it feels like I'm needed.
Hmm.
I belong here. I have a place here, right? It's like there's that's such a deep need, I think, for all of us. It's like we need to feel like the world needs us.
Hmm.
And so by being of help, being of service, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm needed.
Hmm.
That feels that's something I need. There's a purpose there, even if it's small.
Hmm.
And I mean, like even just cleaning up my own space too is like
Hmm.
maybe I'm not quite ready to go outside, but like I notice like just cleaning something is like, okay, there's a little more order there. That's a little, it's just like clean and there's like a breath that happens when it's like, okay, the space is I'm taking care of my space,
Hmm.
right? So like sometimes I do find like I do that where I'm like I'm just grumpy and what I don't even want to like do my morning meditation, but I'm like, all right, I'll just without even thinking it, I'm just like starting to move things around and just kind of tidy up and do the dishes. Like something so small sometimes can be like, okay, that's a little bit of momentum of like, I'm not living in filth. I'm cleaning. I'm
Hmm.
moving that direction.
That's beautiful, and I think there's something to be said about this cleaning specifically. When you've got a lot of cloud in your mind, cleaning might actually be a good way to move through all that.
Hmm.
Like I truly believe that this world that we experience around us is a reflection of our inner state. And even that simple act of just picking up a few things or cleaning things, it might be enough to get things moving, to get you in a different state. And then on top of it, your space is cleaner. Like every tiny little win, no matter how small it is,
Hmm.
that can increase the chemicals in your brain that make you feel good. Even just by a tiny, tiny little bit, these things are happening all the time. But
Mm.
the more tiny little wins that we can stack up, that we can muster up when we're feeling shitty, that all that stuff is going to be moving in the right direction, if
Mm.
anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said earlier that it's like you might, even if you're really depressed, you might do all these things and it might not help like a deep depression and just makes me, it's like, it's hard to zoom out when you're in the cave, right?
Hmm.
But it's like if you zoom out enough, it's like those things are helping. And it's all the little pieces that are going to add up. So it's like it might not help in the day, it might not help in the week. If it's really bad, you might be in that place for months or something, but like I mean, some people are depressed for years, but they're probably not taking, these little steps again and again. I'm guessing if they're stuck in that place for years, but it's like makes me think of the idea of like the hologram. It's all like the little pieces, the pixels, right? That you were talking about. It's like it's all the little pixels. It's not, there's no one answer. There's no one, here's the thing you do. It's like, well, no, you do that thing, and that gives you a little bit of energy and momentum to do the other positive thing. And then yeah, you clean up your space, you help your neighbor, you meditate. Oh, now I'm feeling kind of good, right? Now it's like, it's easier to go, oh, I'm gonna go eat that salad instead of the donut. And Maybe the most loving thing is to eat the donut sometimes, whatever, but it's like I'm gonna like take the loving action towards myself and others, and it's all the little things that are making up. And so it's like, yeah, if you're down in the pit, what's the smallest little chunk you can do?
Hmm.
Great, you did that. Now what's the next smallest chunk you can do?
Hmm.
Great.
Hmm.
Uh,
No, you're absolutely right. It's accumulation of little things that make up your state of being. Accumulation of little things done over time that maybe in the moment you're like, is this even doing anything? But if you continue doing those little things, years down the road, you'll be like, oh shit, I've been doing those little things and now I'm different. This is me now. And you can see with clarity that had you not been doing those things, you'd still be different, but you wouldn't be the same person you are today who has been doing those things. You wouldn't have the
mhm.
same level of clarity and understanding that you have had you been doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to share with you this, I'm still kind of imbibing my weeks and days with a mantra or a theme. And my go-to mantra lately, I've been asking this every morning. And when I do, it just brings a smile to my face. And the question is, how can I be more loving today? It's how I've been starting all my days. How can I be the most loving today?
Mm,
I try and remind myself that throughout the day when I get triggered or when I get in my own way and in my own head. Am I being as loving as I could be right now? How
mm,
can I be more loving? And some days when I'm not particularly feeling loving, I will say this to myself. And as I'm doing it, I will just think about something that makes me feel love. Usually it's like an image of my daughter smiling and laughing or of us playing together. And if I can tap into that and really just like witness her enjoying life, it makes me feel love for her.
mm,
And so I'll try and connect that energy, that initiation of love that I'm feeling in my body with that phrase. So I'll try and feel the love first,
mm,
and that sort of makes me begin to smile. And then I'll say, beautiful. I've got a hold of that feeling right now. That's love. How
mm,
can I be loving today? How can I be more loving in everything I do? And
mm,
it's kind of been sticking with me. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that and if you have a mantra that you're working with lately or a
mm.
theme.
Yeah. I love that, man. You inspire me. Like that's beautiful. I mean, your lens of like how can I serve others and how can I be loving, and I mean that's what the world needs. So
Mm.
thank you for doing your work and showing up with your heart. Um, yeah, I appreciate
Mm.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, well, I'll say that. So lately, I don't know, maybe the last week or something, I've noticed. I've tried for a while to get to this place where like I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm awake. I'm alive. Like just having that recognition, like, can that be one of my first thoughts?
Mm.
And the last couple of days I have, and even yesterday I woke up and I'm still kind of in the gloom, whatever, but I did have the thought, I'm like, okay, I'm alive. I didn't quite feel the like, oh, I'm so grateful. I didn't feel gratitude yet, but I just even just like the recognition of like, this is my first thought. Okay, I'm alive. Um, and so I'm continuing to kind of play with that. And I would love to just add in like, yeah, like how can I be loving, or just like, can I actually tap in? What am my first feeling?
Mm.
Can I find love?
Hmm.
And it makes me think like my nephew right now is just like, I love that kid so much. I mean, my nieces, all of them, I love them, but like my nephew's just at that age right now. He's so fucking cute, man. He's just like, I love him, and he's just like this little boy, and he just like grunts and growls at everything. He's just like, like that's his favorite word is whether it's success or like frustration, it's ah. I just fucking love it. And so like that, okay, that's I can use that as an anchor to be like, okay, there's love.
Mm.
Um, and one thing I want to keep working with, I today I woke up and I was like, I was tired because I didn't sleep well, but I'm like, I'm gonna take a cold shower. I'm gonna wake myself up. And in the shower, I just started like voicing out. I'm just like, I am a human alive on planet Earth. We're floating around in space. Like, yeah, I poop and I pee and I fart and I this is what I do. And like I just like being kind of silly, but like voicing like it's a wild experience being human. And here I am in a body. Okay. And there's something about like, can I find my voice first thing in the morning?
Mm.
Like I think about, okay, Saturday I was in this funk. And what if like one of the first things I was just like, God, I'm in a funk. I don't like this. Even just like voicing it as opposed to just like kind of stewing in it, like I don't want to do anything.
Mm.
If I can give voice, like I'm a human in a body and I'm feeling stuff and I don't know what it is. And, like you just like, it's like airing it out somehow.
Mm.
And then I'm not taking myself so seriously too,
Mm.
because there's some silliness that is happening when I'm speaking out loud to my house and my wife in the other room who's hearing me just being like, I'm in a meat sack. I don't know what's happening. And so like I want to play with that. I want to, so it's like these little seeds of what's my first thought? What's my first feeling when I wake up? And how soon can I just find my voice and not take myself so seriously,
Mm.
and just be
Mhm.
like, cool, I'm alive. I don't know what that always means, and I don't know what exactly I'm doing sometimes. Sometimes I feel really centered, but I'm alive. Okay. My voice, I've spoken into the space. So I've, like,
Mhm.
yeah,
I
that
love it.
feels good.
I'm gonna try that next time I'm feeling, not 100%.
Yeah.
I like that. Just getting it out, getting it out of your body, getting it out into the air, wringing it out just a little bit might be
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. I get so serious. It's
Hmm.
so serious. No, no, we can't be having fun. My wife is so good at having fun and being playful. And I'm like, go, why are you so playful? Yeah, this is serious. And no, I don't want to be playful with you. It's like I get so wound up and like I don't take myself so seriously, man. It's
Mm.
all good.
Hmm.
Even when it's not, just play with it.
Hmm. That's a really good reminder, and I need to take note of that too. Yeah. Well, thank you, man. This has been an awesome conversation. I love the spontaneity, the jazz of our conversation. It
Mm,
just goes where it wants to go, and when it's done, it's done. That feels like we're done for today.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Love
Awesome.
love connecting with you in this way, and yeah, just such good conversation. I mean, like a whole arc. I felt like you got to show up and be really supportive of me as I was digging through this, but also just weaving a tapestry here of support and
Hmm.
yeah.
It's so much fun. And for whoever is listening, I hope they find benefit from our conversations. I know it livens me up every week, and I look forward to more.
Hmm. Indeed.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
All right, man.
Talk to you soon.
Yep.